Growing Up Weird.
Hi, and welcome to Growing Up Weird, the podcast where we explore how the earliest chapters of Western childhoods shape the health stories that we then carry into our adulthoods. Each week, we dig into the newest evidence, understand how it links together, and walk through some of the changes that we in the West could make to give kids decades of better health. Are you ready? Have you got a cup of tea? Good. We begin, as ever, with the news.
Good morning.
Good
Have you got
morning.
any news?
I do. I've got two today, Greg.
You got two. I've got two. Let's start with you because the last one I've got goes very well with the article.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, well, mine is a topic that I think we're always pretty excited about, Greg. It's risky play.
Oh my word! I'm so excited.
Yeah, so this is a study from University of British Columbia with collaborators in Trondheim in Norway.
Yep.
And they were asking the question, if children take more risks during play,
Yeah.
does that help them to manage risk better? So when they are in a non-play situation, for example, crossing through traffic,
Yeah.
do they make better decisions?
Now I'm going to go on a limb here, riskily, and say yes.
You are right,
Hey!
nuanced way.
Okay, nuanced. Let's have some.
There's been quite a lot of interest and papers coming out in the last few years that say, children that take risks early on in life and have a lot of opportunities to learn about risks through risky play, which is playing at height, playing with sharp things, playing with fire, playing near water, and playing where there's a risk of getting lost.
Yep.
Children who have exposure to those things are better able to deal with risks later in life, such as the being able to withstand peer pressure to do risky things, like things that actually have proper big bad risks, like drug taking.
Jail or hospital consequences.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, but this was actually slightly different framing. They said, let's have a look at how it influences the judgment of children. So they took 7 to 11-year-olds.
Yep.
420 of them from half from Canada, half from Norway. And because, it's not
framing.
very ethical.
They took them. Where did they take them? Why?
Because it's not very ethical to say, right, children, run across in front of that car and how quickly do you do it?
Yep. Fair.
They said, let's use tech. So they used virtual reality.
Lovely.
And so they had two settings. They had a virtual reality playground
Yep.
and a virtual reality road.
Okay.
And what they found, the reason they were asking the question in the first place is that Norway as a culture encourages a lot of independence, risk-taking, and prizes the ability for children to learn how to manage risks at a young age. Canada is much more like the UK and the US in that children tend to be restricted from risks in case they hurt themselves.
Okay. Yes. Fine.
So what they found was that Norwegian children took loads more risks in the playground. And I guess that kind of surprises me, because I think, if it's virtual reality, you're not going to die. But there speaks someone who's actually never put on a pair of VR goggles.
You've never been inside a computer?
I haven't, Greg.
Oh, it's great in there.
So, yeah, I have no idea. But anyway, Norwegian children took a lot more risks than the Canadian children in the playground.
Yep.
And then when it came to the road crossing situation, those risk-taking children, they didn't cross roads any more dangerously, but what they did do was they were able to cross roads safely much quicker, which I think is a really interesting kind of nuance there. They were much more efficient at making risk-based judgments.
That's cool.
No.
Practice of understanding risk leads to faster risk assessment.
Exactly, and it's kind of obvious when you think about it, but I still thought, that's a really interesting finding from that study.
Yeah, that is cool. Okay, right, so my first one then is a report on the ALSPAC study. Are you familiar with the ALSPAC study?
No. Is it something about alpacas?
No, it's nothing to do with alpacas or packaging belonging to somebody called Al or anything like that. It is a from birth to 24 years old. It's one of those Millennium Cohort studies, you know?
Got it.
This one is done in the UK, and they are looking at 5,200 babies from birth onwards.
Okay.
But Katie Emerson at the University of Leicester and her team said, all right, with all this data, what is the actual association between pollution and lung damage?
Oh, fascinating. Okay.
And so they looked at these babies, worked out which had spent more than 75% of their lives, or within a given time period, living in places that had a lot of PM10. PM10, for anybody not incredibly familiar with air pollution, is particulate matter 10 microns or less. It is the sort of carbon flake and stuff generated by idling engines. So if you live near a road that has lights on it, or
a lot of people who idle their engines. Yeah.
or near, I don't know, cars for some reason do it at school pickup and drop off, which is very irritating.
Yeah.
Whatever, doesn't matter. And lots of nitric oxide, and that's normally diesel engines generating that sort of stuff. So
Okay.
again, big, massive Chelsea tractor type areas.
Got it.
And they said, oh, once we have done enormous amounts of stats to get rid of the effect of poverty and weight and play and race and all of that,
Yeah.
we still see roughly 150 milliliters lower adult volume
Whoa.
in places with higher pollution.
So actually their lungs literally
Are
don't
smaller.
expand. Oh my goodness.
And their hypothesis is that the inflammation caused by these sort of things lead to thickening and make it just literally harder to grow your lungs.
Oh gosh.
The worst effect, the worst time to live in a high pollution area, interestingly, not when you're a tiny baby,
Okay.
when you're an adolescent. So mid-teen, early to mid-teen.
And that isn't a factor of, do adolescents go out more? Do they
It looks
Still-
like that's your peak lung growth time.
peak lung growth? Fascinating.
So yeah,
Well, I guess, we think about sports maturation and performance and endurance sports. That's
Yep.
not that surprising, but it kind of is to me.
interesting, isn't it?
Fascinating.
So yeah, if you're going to live somewhere really, really polluty as a child, you do it whenever you like, just not between the ages of, say, 10 and 15.
And when you say going to live somewhere polluted, not all of us have a lot of choice in these
You're
matters.
absolutely right.
But, yeah, very
Well, let's
useful to know
look at
that.
it the other way then.
Yeah.
If you live somewhere polluted, and you are in charge some way of children between the age of, say, 10 and 15, let's say you're a head teacher at a secondary school,
Yeah.
it is more important than for anybody else that you walk up to those large 4x4s that are idling in your car park and say, would you mind knocking that
Yeah.
off? There's a sign just there. You're knackering all our kids' lungs, brains, livers, blood, etc. All right, what's your next piece of news?
My next piece of news is quite a short one, really, and it's slightly different from the sort of usual scientists looked at this and they found this. This paper is scientists, we used to call this disease this,
Yeah,
and now we call it this
Yeah.
for this reason.
okay.
And the paper is it's in the Lancet, from Professor Treader and a couple of other, incredibly high-powered professor types. And what they're talking about is the disease that we previously called polycystic ovarian syndrome,
Ah, yes.
PCOS. They propose that it should be renamed, now let me get this right, PMOS, big change there, but Polyendocrine Metabolic Ovarian Syndrome, because it reflects the fact that this is primarily a metabolic problem. It involves a whole load of hormones, that's what polyendocrine means, and it doesn't always have cysts in the ovaries. And I think this is really interesting because for a long time it's been very clear that PCOS kind of lies within the other syndromes of metabolic ill health that we see, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, and even things like some kinds of acne, etc. They're all within this. When we feed bodies on the wrong thing, they fail in these very predictable ways. And I think PCOS, because it's been historically associated with like problems getting pregnant, although that's often not the symptoms that people are really, really worried about. But because it's been linked to infertility and because it's been seen as kind of a women's health thing, it can often be taken out of context. And so people end up focusing on the uterus rather than on the things that the body.
Yeah. I gotcha.
And so, I mean, to me, PCOS or PMOS, it's kind of what happens to ovaries in a woman of reproductive age when her body is trying to conserve resources because it is having the signals that it needs to store energy and reduce expenditure on non-essential things rather than reproduce and go on to be able to, be a parent to the next generation.
That's interesting. Interesting. That suddenly makes me wonder if the pathologies, reproductive pathologies, are anything like those you'd see in extremely underweight people.
So this is a really interesting question, because actually if you look at the predictors of PMOS in adulthood, having very low birth weight or very high birth weight are both predictors of developing PMOS. But also a lot of the predictors that people talk about, going into puberty early, those are kind of signals, they're the signal that things are already on the wrong foot.
Yeah.
Actually, if you take it back even further, there are papers looking at high sucrose diet in childhood, in infancy and childhood, very strongly linked in rats, but also in humans, sugar consumption is also strongly linked. But it is one of those ones where, because it's a kind of appears to be a growth and development of the system. If you look at a woman with PCOS and you say, but her diet is great, PMOS,
thank you.
You say her diet is great now, that's really good. Like that, there are many things that are good there, but actually the programming may have taken place in a very different dietary context.
Rubbish.
And I think quite often people don't really make that connection. But hopefully with a new definition and putting metabolic right up there, maybe people will start to look at the
cool.
bigger picture more.
Okay, well that is fascinating. My last one, and listener, please forgive me, it is going to sound a bit like I'm rustling paper here because I want to get a quote from this paper exactly right. This one is actually a paper from a couple of months ago, but it was reported in Science Daily last week, and I had missed it first time round, and I think it's worth talking about. Christina Cuesta-Marti and et al. From the University College Cork, which is in Cork, obviously in Ireland, looked at the exposure to Western diet in infancy and what it means for adulthood, food preference, and food-related outcomes.
Okay.
Now, this is why I wanted to get the quote right. She says, right up front, it is well known that exposure to Western diets in early life has been shown to affect appetite regulation, food intake, preference for palatability, overall dopamine circuitry, and hedonic feeding. Now, there are 15 studies referenced in what I just said. This is one of the most heavily referenced sentences I have ever seen in my entire life. And this is partly because researchers in this area have to watch their backs. They are being sniped and told off and discredited for trying to say that junk food is really very bad for children.
Yeah.
So these guys watch their backs, and that makes perfect sense. But this was a study done in mice, which I think is fascinating. They said, look, this is well known. This is a thing in mice, in dogs, in very much in people. If you feed very young babies on highly palatable, high fat, high sugar diets, it changes how they eat and how their brains work for their entire lives. Okay, we know this. But can we fix that, is what they said.
Great.
And they said the most effective way to fix that, if you can't get in and rewire their brains specifically, is to get in and rewire another bit of the neurology you can access, which is the gut circuitry accessed through the microbiome.
Okay.
And so they said, what if we tried to rewire that using a bifidobacter, which is shown to drive people towards healthier foods.
Interesting.
So they used Bifidobacter longum, ACY something or other. It has a very long alphanumeric code at the end of its Latin name. And they fed it with fructooligosaccharides and galactooligosaccharides, which are types of soluble fiber that bacteria love to eat. And lo and behold, in their many, many mice, giving just the prebiotics, so the fiber, the bacteria food, changes adulthood eating patterns and restores them to normal.
Fantastic.
Only in males.
What?
Yeah,
Okay.
I thought that was quite interesting. But if you give the prebiotic and the probiotic, so you give the bacteria and its food, you get a return to normal eating patterns across the board.
Fascinating.
At least a partial return to normal eating patterns,
Okay.
but quite a noticeable return towards normal eating patterns.
Interesting.
And the mice stop doing weird things where they throw away food that is not up to their normal sweetness
Wow.
levels.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask, how do you know that mice are like, ooh, they give me a bit of that carrot?
They showed crumbling behaviors, which I thought was really interesting,
Crumbling behaviour.
where they basically destroy food that isn't what they want.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Anyway, that paper I thought was very interesting, but it's a mouse study, which is important to remember. These results aren't human results. They may reflect human results, but they aren't human results. And the return towards normal was not, oh, interesting squeaky brakes, was not complete. This is not a magical cure-all.
Yeah.
Interesting though, isn't it?
I think it's super interesting. And, you know, it does make me think actually, what would parents be looking for if they were, and again, I'm not in any way recommending this, as I don't even know if these things are available, but, you know, if you have a very selective child and then you introduce them at what age, who knows, to a probiotic and a prebiotic, you know, the mice don't have an identity around not liking vegetables.
That you
They
know
don't
of.
have, that we know of. I mean, that's true. Maybe I'm underestimating their cognitive and articulative abilities.
Go on.
But yeah, I'm just really curious. I do wonder what small return towards normal eating patterns might look like in children. Anyway, fascinating paper, thank you.
I think the bit that got me was the fact that, yeah, some of this is about picky eating. But as they said in that first, I think you'll agree very well, read sentence,
Yeah,
it's not just about picky eating.
yeah.
It's about the underlying metabolism, the brain circuitry,
Yeah,
and the
yeah,
fact
yeah.
that it can lead to hedonic eating.
Yeah, do you want to define that?
No, I don't, because I don't actually understand it very well. I understand that it is a self-dose with dopamine response, where if you are low on dopamine, you would turn to food. You're more likely to turn to food,
Yeah,
which doesn't occur in all/most mammals.
yeah.
That's all I got.
Eating for pleasure rather than for appetite.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the thing I struggle with is that a lot of eating is for pleasure.
Yeah,
Even utterly healthy, normal eating is
Yeah.
for pleasure often.
yeah, but I guess it is pleasurable when you're hungry.
Sure.
It becomes less and less pleasurable as you get full.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
Right?
okay,
I think that is for me the difference between normal eating and hedonic eating.
Interesting. Okay. Well, there we go. An interesting paper. And I think it ties in quite well to the article you wrote this week, which we will discuss now.
So, as you may be able to hear from the lack of bird calls, we've just got off the bike. But that link from that last paper to Gwen's article is really, really valid here. Gwen, this week you've written about satiety, which is a word I didn't really use or know much before this week. What is satiety?
Satiety is the feeling of having enough food that stops you eating.
Okay, which is different to just feeling full?
Yeah, it has both components of physiological input. So
Okay.
that is the sensations that we get from our stomach, which talk about us being physically full,
Right.
and components from our brain, as the psychological components, which are much more around what we have eaten recently in that meal and how much we've eaten in the previous days and months.
Interesting. Okay, satiety's a system built into all of us. It will have evolved in for a reason. What is the advantage to having satiety?
Well, our bodies are always trying to trade off the benefits of storing more energy. So if we need it, we can be called upon, we can use it as we need, and not carrying too much extra weight. So we're able to do all the processes that we're able to do as much as possible. So our body weight should be regulated in a very narrow band that is appropriate for the context that it's in. And part of how we regulate our body according to what our body needs now and in the future is with a sensation of satiety, which tells us when to stop eating.
Fair enough. So making sure we get enough in, making sure we haven't got too much stored,
Yeah,
and hopefully helping us not feel a bit frantic in between.
exactly.
Interesting. Okay. Right. As with a bunch of other natural signaling systems in the body, I assume you're born with the components to this, but it needs to be set up to function well in adulthood, yes?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. I can see where this is going then. How do you set up satiety, or how should it be set up to work well in adulthood?
So in order for bodies to learn about satiety, we need to have two components really. We need to make sure that our bodies learn to recognize that feeling of fullness and stop eating. So there's a kind of, how do we link feeling of fullness and the behavioral habit of stopping eating?
Interesting. Yeah, go on.
And then we also need to make sure that that feeling of fullness is a strong signal, that we are able to pay attention to it.
Our bodies can tell our brains, and our brains can react appropriately.
Exactly, yeah.
Interesting. Okay. You already said that part of that body telling the brain is about fill from the stomach. What else goes into the body telling your brain that you've had enough food?
So our body also has signals about the meal itself. So how much you've chewed, how many nutrients are getting into your blood.
Oh, interesting. From the small intestine.
From the small intestine, but also from your brain, your eyes. So how much you've seen of the food, how much you've anticipated the food, who you're eating with, and how the sort of social cues of eating. All of these things about that meal occasion are integrated through your brain, and they contribute to whether your brain thinks, to how your brain perceives that meal.
Okay.
And then there's another component as well, and that is not just looking at the short term, how was that meal, but actually looking at the body and assessing it and saying, how much energy do we have stored? Is this an appropriate level? Should we be eating more to fill up our energy stores? Should we be eating less and relying a bit more heavily on our energy stores?
I guess the question, did I get what I need, is two parts. It's what did I get and what do I need?
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I've always noticed that I am particularly hungry after having done a lot of exercise. I would assume, therefore, that, I don't know, some marker of muscle activation plays into the hunger system in some way.
Yes, absolutely right. There are different cues about how much energy you have stored. I talked about fat, but there are other stores in the liver, for example, that can be exhausted. And so your body then wants to fill those stores back up as well.
Interesting. Okay. So I'm seeing a system here that has multiple not alarms, but sensors feeding into a central processor that then has to cause an effect.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes sense. It also seemed quite robust. Multiple sensors often mean redundancy and like it shouldn't go horribly wrong.
Yep.
Does it go horribly wrong?
Well, I would say that just to the first point of what you just said, I think that we often, within our culture, have this view that appetite is something that you control, that willpower is a very important part of appetite regulation.
Interesting.
But that's not how it works in most animal species. You know, animals, most kind of wild animals aren't consciously saying, oh gosh, well, I better not eat that deer today. Yeah, exactly. The idea of appetite being a consciously regulated body system is just really strange, because it's like many other systems that we use to keep our body functioning in a way that enables us to be healthy, to grow, to develop, to repair.
I'm just going to use my central willpower to keep my blood pressure down.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really funny. But because of various inputs, as you allude to, that affect how we feel satiety, we end up in a state where many adults are having to really consciously regulate their appetite, which is just exhausting. It's not something that we're supposed to do.
Okay.
And so what we really want to think about today is then what do we do in childhood to make sure that we set up the systems to work as effectively as possible?
Well, you have just asked yourself the perfect question.
Exactly.
What do we do in childhood to set up the systems as well as possible?
So what we need for children is we need to make sure that they are getting strong signals from their satiety centres. They have the space to pay attention to those signals and recognise them, and they're allowed to act on the behavioural, to perform the behaviour of stopping eating.
Interesting.
Right?
Okay.
So we're trying to make sure that we support that process. So how do we make sure they get strong signals? That's about making sure they've got plenty of nutritious food, especially fibre. That's really, really important. Protein, and food that requires them to chew.
Because you said that chewing was one of the markers for you've had enough food.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And also these foods also in the stomach provide those feelings of physical stretch as well, which are not a huge component of satiety, but certainly contribute. So we need to be giving children sufficient nutritious food to drive those feelings inside them.
Mm-hmm.
We also need to make sure that there's nothing getting in the way of our body communicating to our appetite centres about how much energy we have stored.
Okay, gotcha.
And this is a time, I think, to talk a little bit about leptin.
Let's talk about leptin. Want me to talk about leptin?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so the white fat that you have in your body, either under your skin or around your organs, isn't just a storage medium, isn't just a sexual maturity signaling medium, which it also is, but it also is an endocrine organ in that it produces hormones, the adipokines and others. But one of them is called leptin. It is produced by white fat and it acts as an appetite suppressor. So the theory goes, more fat, need less food, need less appetite, produce leptin. Less fat means you need more food, means you need more appetite, but luckily you've got less leptin. Okay, that's leptin. What else do we need to know?
Great. So the nothing interfering with the leptin system and plenty of nutritious food helps to make sure that we have a really strong signal that a child can feel that says, I'm feeling full.
Sure.
But then the second component of that system is we need to help them to link that feeling of full to stopping eating.
Sure.
And again, I say help them. Usually it's unconscious, but we're talking about what they need to learn here. And in order for them to be able to show that behaviour, they need to have choice over when to stop eating. So if a child is eating, feels that feeling, and the parent says, come on, you need to finish your plate before you can get down, that helps them to practice ignoring that feeling and continuing past it.
Okay. And yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? The idea that you might want a child to eat more than the child wants to eat is fascinating because at first glance, that seems very counterintuitive. Why on earth would you want that?
I think historically there was a lot of focus on this because of trying to avoid food waste.
Sure.
And also because picky eating and selective eating can be a real problem in children. And if parents have misjudged the size of the portion, then you can have a child that just gets full on the stuff that is not very nutritious and very palatable.
Yeah.
And then the only way, if you give them too much food for them to eat the stuff that is more nutritious, is to say you have to finish your plate.
But that's spatial differentiation amongst the plate, right? Mm-hmm. But you've also got temporal spreading of the meal. Mm-hmm. It's like as we get more and more into snacking culture, a meal isn't just what's on your plate, it's what's on your plate over the preceding 4 or 5 hours. Mm-hmm. And if you have gone for the snacks, you can consider that as only eating the very palatable part of what's on the plate. Yeah. There are 2 ways here to fill up, not just what's on the plate, but also what's on the plate versus time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
And so I think that's, you've got to finish everything on your plate. Mm-hmm. That's one way that we stop a child acting on the feelings of fullness.
Yeah.
And the second thing is that we often accidentally put something that's really rewarding and addictive at the end of the meal. And as soon as we do that, we tend to call it dessert, not addictive like final course.
Post-meal cigarette or something for an 8-year-old.
No, we don't talk about it as dessert. But if we put that thing that children really want at the end of the meal, then what we really create is a feeling that the rest of the meal is some kind of barrier to get through in order to access that dessert. I mean, we know at school, like the children at school, they tell us that they're only allowed to start eating their dessert once someone judges that they've had enough food. Mm-hmm. And you can see the logic behind it, but it's really bad at helping them to learn how the feeling of satiety.
Yeah, or the flip side, it's really good at teaching them to ignore satiety.
Exactly.
Okay, how do we turn that into things that people can actually do?
I think there are just 2 things to remember here.
Okay.
And I think one of them is that we shouldn't give young children desserts.
Interesting.
I love desserts. As an adult, occasionally, I reckon I can probably manage the amount of food that I eat. But it's really hard for children because it's not just about that eating episode. It's about setting up habits and behaviours and a practice of ignoring feeling full from a very early age.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We've got young children, we should be thinking about putting small amounts of lots of different foods of all the foods in a meal on their plate. not giving them any more food until they finish the food, and if they want more food, they have a little bit of everything else. That's same sort of structuring food environment that we've talked about before.
So you're pulling dessert apart here into two things. It's not just that it's sweet and hyper rewarding. It's that it's separate and after the meal. And if either one of those things was removed, so if you had a special post-meal course of sauerkraut, that wouldn't be dessert. And I'm aware I've just said something very obvious. Nobody likes a post-meal sauerkraut. But it's not the fact that it's after the meal that's a problem. Similarly, if there were little parts of your meal that were quite sweet, that also wouldn't be as much of a problem because you're not having to ignore being full to enjoy those pieces. And you're not, forcing yourself through the rest of the meal and learning to see the rest of the meal as a barrier to get to those pieces.
Absolutely.
So sure, it's not great giving kids sweet food, and it's not great giving kids extra stuff after they've had a meal, but it's the fact that it's both that is particularly troublesome. Fascinating. Okay, I think I get it.
And I think you've actually covered my other point as well in that breakdown, which is, I love it. But my other point is that if you do get to the end of a meal, a whole family's eaten, and you've basically run out of food and people are still hungry, don't try and provide something that is extra delicious at that point. You want to provide something that is nutritious, that stimulates satiety signals, so we don't end up feeling full and then eating more because we've got something that is so delicious at the end.
Hunger is a finite resource. And you want to use it to get useful stuff into the body. You don't need it if you want to put junk in the body because that'll go in no matter what.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the sort of papers that I found particularly interesting here was that they had people and they gave them sweet and salty and sour things before and after a meal. And what they found was that when you're hungry, you'll eat almost anything. But when you're full, you eat almost nothing except sweet food. So our preference for sweet food doesn't change across the course of a meal. So putting it at the end is really bad because that's the point where you will just keep eating.
That's interesting. That ties back to my mouse paper. The fact that their preference for sweet food was so much stronger in mice that had been raised on hyperpalatable sweet food makes it seem as if they are the post-meal ones and the rest of us are the pre-meal ones. I am, of course, describing myself as a mouse there.
You're a very, very large mouse.
Damn huge mouse. Okay, that's really interesting. Anything to add as a closing statement?
No, I think that's it. But it's really worthwhile helping children to learn how to regulate their appetite, because for anyone who's had to use willpower to control appetite in adulthood,
she's looking at me
it is
here.
Not fun and it's really hard work.
Well aware
Why
of that.
don't we think about setting kids up without ever having that on their plate, so to speak?
Oh, end on a pun. Yeah, wouldn't that be great? I love the idea of being able to just eat what I want when I want. That would be great. But I can't. And most of us can't because of how we're raised. Fascinating.
Yes. You got a listener question?
I do have a listener question.
Can I hear the listener question?
Yeah. The question is, my toddler is 1. She started eating loads of food when I started introducing it, but recently she just wants to have breast milk and she's hardly eating any food at all.
A 1-year-old?
A 1-year-old.
Interesting. Okay. I heard a phrase for this a while ago. What was the word for this?
This is milk dependency.
That's the one. I thought it was a great word. It sounded very heroin chic, but with milk.
It does. I mean, milk dependency, we usually use it to refer to children who drink a lot of cow's milk or a lot of formula. So it's not often talked about in relation to breastfeeding because breastfeeding is so great for kids.
Interesting.
And in our culture, it's really uncommon for parents to, to feed to, even 1, but 2, 3, etc. Extended breastfeeding is really uncommon, but has loads of health benefits.
Cool.
So typically we don't really talk about milk dependency in breastfeeding, but it's even with all those benefits, just drinking breast milk can cause problems for the little one.
Such as,
I think there are 2 categories of problems. When a toddler only drinks milk, there's one part where the milk is displacing other parts of the diet, right?
Okay.
So and that has 2 consequences. One, the toddler doesn't learn how to chew foods, how to eat a whole wide range of different foods, and just how to explore the foods that they may need to eat once they stop having milk.
So it's a taste, textures, learning thing.
Taste, textures, learning.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So that's one element of it. And the other is that if they are only drinking milk, they end up at risk of certain nutritional deficiencies. So
Yeah, okay.
things like iron's a really obvious one.
But also fibre.
But also fibre, yeah. And not just, any one kind of fibre, all the rich range of fibres there are in different fruits and vegetables.
And your microbiome support, as your microbiome's meant to be shifting from a milk-based microbiome to a food-based microbiome, setting you up for your adulthood health.
Exactly, and that's part of the purpose of that breastfeeding, is to help work with your child's body as they start to eat those different foods, to make it easier, to make their microbiome more resilient, more stable, and better set up for health.
That's interesting. So 2 things then. A learning what to do with food thing, and your body needs more nutrients than it could possibly get from milk thing.
Exactly, yeah.
But both because the milk is displacing other food. You're getting too little other food rather than getting too much milk.
Exactly, yeah, that's it.
That much milk wouldn't be a problem if there was also other food going in.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that your child might be very full because milk's also quite low in energy density, so it's very
quite
easy
watery.
to fill up. Yeah.
Did your child end up with super kidneys or just wash out the
I
kidneys?
have no idea.
Interesting. Okay, so then the final nugget of advice, how would you boil that down?
So the milk, that's a great idiom.
We're not making custard here, come on.
But so what we're trying to do is we're trying to help make sure that the child's hunger and signals for eating are directed at food, not at milk. So the easiest thing to do is just make sure you don't breastfeed before meals. So when a child is hungry, the first thing you do is you provide food, not milk.
Yeah.
And actually, for younger children, often this can, it starts to reverse really very quickly, because often, when they were babies and they looked hungry, we fed them, right? And then when they're toddlers, that's our instinct as well. But if we can just make sure that we hold back, we provide food, we let the child eat the food, and then we feed them after the meal, that's the way to help direct them towards eating food.
Okay, if I push you again and say, can I have an answer as short as the question, what is it?
If your toddler looks hungry, give food, not milk.
Okay, food first, milk later.
Food first,
Love
milk
it.
later. And actually, with toddlers, that doesn't mean that you just offer meal times. It means that toddlers usually need food at multiple points in the day.
Yeah.
So just make sure that every time they look hungry, it's food that comes first.
Love it. Absolutely perfect. Thank you very much for putting up with my questions. You have been Dr. Gwen Bradbury. I have been
Dr. Greg Dickens.
And this has been Growing Up Weird. See you later.
Bye.